What's going on, great people in all the lands? I'm your host, Nicholas Wilcox. This guy right here is good old Johnny Main. Johnny, say what's up to the great people.
Long time no see, but we are back like four flats. You know what I mean? On a Cadillac.
God,
so, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yo,
we
again.
back. We back,
Oh,
baby. You
God.
know what I mean? We back.
God.
What up? What up? What up?
What up? What up? What up? Yo, it's y'all people in the house. It's your favorite cousins in the house.
That's right.
We got a little thing that we want to break down, and that's the Debo trade breakdown. Look, the other, we're like 48 hours removed from the news actually happening, but we wanted to give you guys our take on, this because this could have some fantasy implications in terms of, for later on in the upcoming months and this summer, and for some sickos right now that are drafting best ball right now. These are for these people. So, if you haven't seen some of our work, please like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. If you are on Twitter, these are the handles. If you're on X, whatever you want to call it these days, we can answer y'all questions. We have ideas coming down the lane. We got interviews upcoming. Like, we have a lot we're excited about. Some rebranding ish happening. So just be on the lookout for us. We're gonna come out with just some random times, videos, whatever, when things come to surface. But without further ado, we're gonna be talking about Debo. And if you guys haven't heard about it already, Debo was traded to Washington for a 5th round pick. The details behind that is the Niners are going to eat $31 million with this trade. And Debo, who's on the final year of his contract, going to earn $17.5 million with Washington. Interested to hear, Johnny's take, my takes when it comes to this situation. So, Johnny, please lead it off. What are your total thoughts? I know you're disappointed that, another receiver got away from you in terms of the Steelers. But for a 5th round pick, like, you would think he'd go for a 4th, maybe even a 3rd round pick. Why do you feel he went so cheap? Why do you think that his market wasn't as bountiful via trade? Do you think because some teams were just like waiting for him to be released or whatever have you? Like, where are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think there's a lot of different reasons, man. For me, I think one of the main reasons why, right, is like you don't know how he's going to be used in the offense depending on where he lands there, right? I think like one of the things that makes Debo for fantasy managers has been his versatility and what he's done coming down the stretch. So I think that's one of the reasons why. I think the other thing is obviously age. I believe he's 29 years old, and for someone who is that old and plays the game the way that he plays, right, and just signed the extension, I believe it was last year or the year before with the Niners, that's another cause for concern, right? And then also too, man, depending on where some of these teams are, I think one of the sayings like I always love hearing is all it takes is one team, right? And that one team is the Washington Commanders. And I think for me, for this trade, I think it just highlights a couple of things, honestly, for me. I think it highlights the fact that the San Francisco 49ers are one of the best teams in the NFL when it comes to roster management and understanding their roster, right? They drafted Ricky Pearsall in the 1st round, got my guy, Juwan Jennings from UT, playing good football down the stretch. So like, I think this is just, it's just natural attrition, right? Like it's a business, and the San Francisco 49ers put themselves in a position so that, they would have to make the decision between Debo or Brandon Ayuk. I think like we all know that Debo is not necessarily a true wide receiver. He's more of someone who you just get the football to in different designs, which is something I'll talk about a little bit later on here. But I think that's one of the main reasons why. And even if you just go back and think even a handful of years ago, right, with Antonio Brown, whenever he moved on from the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe it was a 4th round pick, I believe, for him. And at that point in time, like, there's no question about it. Antonio Brown was one of the best wide receiver in football, at least top 3. And so you're talking about Debo Samuel, who's coming off of a down year. So I think a 5th round pick makes sense. I do think it's a little bit odd that, they're willing to eat that amount of money, San Francisco is. But nonetheless, man, Debo's got a new home with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. I mean, look, what a bargain, by the way. What a bargain. for Washington. And I don't know, just there's something that said right to me about eating $31 million or approximately at least. Um, Eating $31 million. You just extended Brandon Ayuk, and yet you're talking about trading him too. So, I, I don't know what the Niners are doing right now, to be honest with you. Like, that's baffling to hear that they're looking to trade Brandon Ayuk as well. And obviously, I'm gonna say it's so baffling because you have to go pay Purdy, but man, like it's still a little like, yo, what are you doing? um, so I'll just say that. For the Washington side of things, you're getting a stud of Debo Samuel, who we felt should have been utilized a little bit better down the stretch for the Niners. Um, I'm still waiting to hear about anything that may have hampered Debo's performance via injury or anything, because we know he missed a couple, maybe it's a couple of games, middle of the season, um, via illness, and then the overall, like, I think he was with a calf injury, something like that. And from that on, it just didn't seem like Debo was ever Debo. It didn't seem like the Niners were really scheming Debo up like we normally would see anyway. So we really had a mediocre finish to what we were potentially could be seeing from Debo Samuel. What I will say is that Washington, getting a weapon like Debo, they got their second receiver outside McLaurin, who, this is a great Swiss Army knife piece for Washington. I think for Washington moving forward, I really think they need to still get a bigger bodied receiver, like more of a deep threat downfield. McLaurin is that, but I'm saying big bodied wide, like go getter, I'm saying, like, catch radius type of receiver. They're still missing that, in my opinion. But in terms of this trade, Washington wins this one so easily. Your fifth round pick is what, barely a camp guy, let alone potentially maybe they make your roster, maybe not, maybe they make their practice squad. So it's like, look, like you're taking on $17.5 million of Debo's contract, and this is again a situation where you're more than happy taking on, because if he even doesn't re-sign, you're still in a position to potentially still win some decent ball games with the schematics you got available. With Washington last year, Washington ranked 5th in screens pass attempts last year, throwing 80 of those in regular season. They averaged 5.4 yards per pass attempt on screens. That was a 22nd mark in the league. So they could easily improve apart in that category, inserting Debo into this offense. Because we all know Debo can still, in a way, be electric with the football, and we know he could still run with the football as well. In terms of yards after catch, because outside of McLaurin, there were just times in Washington we're trying to lean on Zach Ertz, they were trying to lean on other guys, Denami Brown, like, see these other guys that haven't really been like such a threat to a defense at times. But again,
No, I was just gonna say, man, like, I was gonna say, you got to the Washington side of things, man, like, still some things like I want to hit on about the 49ers, but as far as
we'll get there.
As far as Washington goes, man, like, you already talked about it a little bit, man. Diami Brown and Noah Brown, right? Like, those were your two outside wide receivers who respectfully lined up outside 75% of the time for Noah Brown and 81% of the time for Diami Brown, right? So I think you look at that, and then OZ as well was in the mix. Like, they did it with a group of guys, and I think, like, when you look at this and you look at the situation and you look at Debo Samuel now going to this group, I agree. I think Washington won here, and I think one of the things that really hamstrung him throughout the entire course of the year was just drops. Like, that was the biggest thing, and I think drops happen, right? I don't think Debo Samuel has forgotten how to play football. I think one of the other elements for him, that happened during the course of the season was Brandon Ayuk after the ACL tear, I believe it was week 7, right? Like, things went downhill for him performance-wise at that point, because he did have 2 100-yard games before week 7. And I think he only had maybe one game of 90 something yards after the Brandon Ayuk injury. And then you also have to factor in the Christian McCaffrey injury as well. So I think it changed up some things for him. But realistically, like I said, drops was the biggest component. Debo has been who he has been over the last 2 years. He's been somebody who's been a number two-ish wide receiver in that offense. And that's not even accounting for Christian McCaffrey's targets that he had back, not this year, but the previous year. So 2 years ago, it's not even accounting for that. So now when you look at him going to Washington, right, and now Zach Ertz, very similar. I don't want to say a similar offense, but just you look at the situation, right? You have Zach Ertz, the tight end, who was the second leading receiver for the Commanders last year. Obviously, you have Terry McLaurin, who would essentially be in the same space as a Brandon Ayuk as far as being, the alpha wide receiver out there. So Debo naturally slides back into, a role that's him being as like the number two-ish wide receiver or number two playmaker for that team. So I think it's a good look. I think obviously as well, you have to factor in Cliff Kingsbury and what he can do offensively and do creatively with that group. Going back and looking at, just what he's done with some of the number two type wide receivers, just statistically, right? You're talking about, and this is from 2019 to 2022, you're talking about Christian Kirk, you're talking about D-Hop, and then you're talking about AJ Green. And I'll kind of pause right there because when I look at AJ Green, right, like I think a lot of people very similar, right, thought AJ Green was washed. AJ Green had 848 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he was still somebody who was relevant for fantasy managers and relevant for the Cardinals offense as well. And then Hollywood Brown back in 2002. So I think you're going to see very similar production from Debo as far as like the 600 to 700 yard mark receiving. And maybe the 50 to 60 yards. Maybe the 50 to 60 receptions. I think obviously touchdowns will be the game changer, and how Cliff Kingsbury gets creative and uses him in this offense with a guy like Jaden Daniels, because I think that's the catch right there is, how they're going to use him in this offense and Jaden Daniels and the things that they can do and how creative they can get. So I feel like, again, man, this is a win again for the Commanders. I think it's a big win for Debo Samuel, and I'm going to buy the dip on him this year for sure.
I think it makes sense to do so. It's from a fantasy perspective, it's like going to be like, it's just not going to be the same situation that we pretty much saw. Like we all know what Debo is, and you have to get him situations where he's going to get short passes. This offense revolves all around that. Just Daniels, Daniels just firing the football, finding ways to get the offense going. And then hitting your big shot down the field. So yeah, again, he has an offense that's going to be great. Hopefully for his overall repertoire of what he provides. And I think Washington, again, just got a big steal. I think anyone that traded a 5th round pick for this guy would have won this trade anyway.
Yeah. And then given what Washington has, like, it's not like they have anybody that's waiting in the wings to be the next big thing, like they're a wide receiver. Like they don't have anybody that's waiting there. So like, man, it's it's a free space, man.
It is. Sure is. Niners side of things, man. Yeah. Man, again, the cap space situation, and then after talking and hearing rumbles about Brandon Ayuk and stuff like that, like it's crazy. Look, anytime, saying someone, again, I hear the opportunity wanting to trade Ayuk because look, like $120 million contract, and all of a sudden you get hurt week 7, like, just yikes. I know you want to talk about the next person that'll be stepping up. You want to call him the Don, Juwan Jennings.
Yeah.
How about Ricky Pearsall, who for whatever reason didn't get showcased as much down the stretch rookie season. Remember, they spent a 1st round pick on him as well. And again, he was just somewhat quiet. But again, the last 2 games of the season was pretty nice. He had 141 yards against the Lions and a score, and then 69 yards and a score against Arizona in the final game of the season. So I mean, look, like I think Juwan Jennings showcased what he could definitely do as well. I think Pearsall would be the interesting one for me when it comes to fantasy situations, because we know Juwan Jennings should go, if we're looking at rankings, like, what I'm saying, like he'll go, in terms, he's definitely going to be a top 25 receiver. Like Ricky Pearsall, we have no idea. He may be a top 40 receiver, maybe. And for the discounted price of that, I could look at that as well, depending on if I miss out on Jawan Jennings in my draft or not. And then obviously we have to make sure Purdy resigns. But what are your thoughts overall when it comes to the Niners, besides Jawan Jennings?
Well, it's funny you say that because Jawan Jennings is essentially going to be, I don't want to say he's going to be replacing Debo, but like he's the guy that's next up, right? Like he's the guy because
he could be number one if they trade Ayuk.
He could be. Like, I mean, but again, there's still Brandon Ayuk.
Hear that, best ball sickos? You could go draft him, right?
Brandon Ayuk is still there, right? And I think that's one of the things, like, because I did want to talk about Ricky Pearsall. I wanted to call him Pretty Ricky or Ricky from Boys in the Hood Pearsall. But like either way, man, right? Like you have to talk about both of these guys because neither one realistically at this point has a clear path to that 2 spot. If so, it's probably going to be Jawan Jennings at this point. But Ricky Pearsall looked really good coming down the stretch. For sure. So, and then you have George Kittle, who's there as well, who led the team last year in receiving with over 1,000 yards. So, they still have options, right? So I don't think it's so open and shut that it's just, hey, like this is what it is, because you still have, and again, like with the ACL with Ayuk, right? Players are coming back from that and
more often than we
like it's obviously not as detrimental as it has been in the past, right? So I feel like we'll see what happens with Brandon Ayuk, and I think there was a lot of outside noise with the contracts and the possibility of trades and this and that was going on. And not the last thing, but one of the things I will say inside of this is like there's also that Super Bowl hangover, man. Like that Super Bowl hangover, that Super Bowl curse, if you will. Like that was hanging out there, right? So for me, man, I just, like I said, like if I have to look at this situation, I understand why the 49ers did it. It sucks that they're going to have to eat that money, but at the end of the day, now they're eating that money, and now you have 2 guys in Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall that like you don't have on the books that have that caliber of Debo money. Like you said, like they gotta pay Brock Purdy. They're gonna have to figure out something with Trent Williams. They got a really expensive defense, so like they got to make some business decisions, man. And like these were the decisions that were made for the 49ers. And again, it's not like they are actually losing out as far as like not having depth at this position, because they do. So on the outside, it looks like a huge loss when you see the name Debo, but the San Francisco 49ers definitely have the depth at wide receiver to be able to absorb this blow. And we've seen what Jawan Jennings and we've seen what Ricky Pearsall can do when they got the opportunity.
Yeah. And I just think that when the reason why you draft Ricky Pearsall last year for a moment like this, where if you weren't able to re-sign Brandon Ayuk at the time, you would have had Pearsall way in the wings. Obviously, him getting shot, kind of, digress things a little bit. But then you would still have Jawan Jennings, who again 975 receiving yards last year. I believe 8 scores, I think, for him last year, 6. When it was basically without Debo, without Pearsall, without Ayuk in the lineup, missing time at times. So it was proven that Jawan Jennings can somewhat be a nice little alpha, you know what I'm saying, for the offense. And then, again, you have other pieces still here. We don't want to forget about George Kittle, who could, could potentially be a nice spot where I would want to draft Kittle a lot more. If I didn't love him last year, definitely love him upcoming this year. If nothing else were to change in his offense, because Kittle getting a heck of yards after the catch constantly. We all know he's still a decent, big body guy down, in the red zone, obviously. So, but yeah, the Purdy situation, I'm sure, is like, what the Niners were also thinking about too. Again, Debo leaves them with $34 million cap space still, but they still have some free agents. They still have, fill out sign and all these other things that come up. Lynch's going to have to get creative when it comes to this situation in general, still moving forward, even after Debo's gone. So I'll say this. I mean, the Niners getting a 5th round pick. It's like, it's like, it's nothing to be, up in arms about. But again, as long as you do your scouting, like, hey, you never know. Someone may fall down the draft boards and improve you in a spot like you need. For example, offensive line. You gotta think about Trey Williams, like,
Yeah.
eventually going off into the sunset. Like, so
And they've
there's
done an okay
the
job,
Niners,
man, as far as
man,
drafting too, man. Like they haven't been bad as far as the draft goes. When you look at their roster, they definitely have a couple players on their team that are some later round guys. So we'll see.
totally. I agree. But yeah, when it comes to ADPs right now, these ADPs are based on what platform, John?
These are on Underdog, which is not available here in the great state of Maine.
Nope.
But you got which sucks because I have to travel to Mass to play any type of Underdog or do some slow drafts. But you're really looking at Debo and you're looking at Don, Jawan, Jennings, basically being picked right beside each other. So tonight, like that's one of the things like we're gonna talk about super quick, man, is like you're on the clock. Debo or Jawan Jennings? Who you going with?
I would say so. I'm looking up some ADP called Drafters. Drafters has something going on right now too. That's available in my state.
Yeah, Drafters
So
is available
80
here too.
for Drafters right now. 67th overall is Jawan Jennings, and then Debo is 79 average right now. So, if we're looking just at drafters alone, yeah, I'll take that gamble on 79 overall for Debo. But if we're talking about underdog currently, basically neck and neck, look, like I think in a vacuum, I would take probably Jawan Jennings just because he overall has the ability to get to that wide receiver one range versus Debo. The only way Debo can get back to a spot where we saw from several years back is that if Washington literally uses him like a Swiss Army knife, like he did, like running the ball, hitting those slot screens, those yards after the catch, like he'll have to be utilized in ways that, again, the Niners haven't used him in a couple of years. So that would be interesting to see, but that's probably why I would still lean towards Jawan at the moment, because we all know he could still be a number one receiver in an offense that, will be throw heavy. Washington's offense in general should be a little bit more balanced in general, but I think the Niners, like, they're still somewhat throw heavy. When all pieces are together, they're a running team, but Brock Purdy's still able to utilize things for getting Jawan Jennings open. But if someone said Debo, I wouldn't be mad about that either. But I think at this stage of the moment, like, if we're talking about drafters in general, I'll take Debo at 79 versus 67.
Oh, I know you will. I know that. I know. Yeah. I know.
The value guy.
Let's make it tight. Let's make it challenging. Let's make it challenging here, right? Let's make it challenging for the people.
No, look, I have no problem if someone said Debo, because, like, look, like, but the only thing is, like, you don't want to be wishfully thinking, for a player either. Like, it's like Debo could still be that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3-ish, solid, but not like bringing you that ceiling. So that's the only problem.
Yeah. I obviously I think everybody knows my love affair with everybody from UT. Good, bad, or indifferent. Yep. I think this is a really unique situation for me because I look at Jawan Jennings and I just think about, like you said, you don't want to be wishful, right? But like you go back to the 49ers offense. Do you have a healthy Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall? You go to the Commander side of things, Terry McLaurin and a 35-year-old Zach Ertz. Not a lot of people Debo's got to beat out to get the ball, right? And I think, if Jaden Daniels doesn't see a sophomore slump and he continues to build on what it was that we saw, obviously last season, he was able to make household names out of guys like, Diami Brown and Noah Brown and OZ, right? So if he was able to do that, with those guys, even if Debo is washed, I still think that there's definitely still some meat on the bone as far as Debo goes. And I just think offensively there was some other like really interesting stats like I had too, man. Like as far as like last year, what the 49ers did as far as like specific design plays for him. Debo, like they had, I think he had the highest percentage according to fantasy points, the highest designed plays targets for the San Francisco 49ers.
Good job.
For last year, right? So they did try to get him the ball, but again, it was just drops, man. Like that's what it was just drops.
Yeah.
So you got to think, like, I believe he went from
Yips.
like, he went from like 8.9, 2.6 or 2.7 drops the previous year to 8.9, which was absolutely the highest on the team. But I just think, like, you give Cliff Kingsbury another weapon in this offense, another way to get really creative. And I think, he's going to be able to showcase some of those talents, because schematically now teams are going to have to be worried about, like you said, Jaden Daniels and getting to the outside and his mobility. And you got to worry about Terry McLaurin getting behind you. And no matter what we want to say about Debo Samuels, a defensive back in Debo Samuel one-on-one, I'm taking Debo every time, man. But as far as like in this situation here, man, just to be difficult here, man, I would take Debo here. And then on drafters, I would be with you as well, man. I would take the discount on him for sure. But that doesn't mean, man, I'm not going to have any shares of Juwan Jennings, because I'm absolutely going to get my shares of him. But for argument's sake tonight, I'm taking Debo.
Just like the Nico Collins shares. All right.
my man.
Oh, man. So what we got next on deck is next week we're going to have our show. We're going to go over our free agency prediction show, where we are going to break down places that we think are the best fits for some certain players, in terms of the free agency, as free agency starts March 12th. So obviously, look for us in terms of predictions. If you got your own predictions, come and hang out in the chat with us and, have some conversation. So it's going to be a great show. Looking forward to the, just breaking down some more of these free agents. I'm sure you saw the combine was this past weekend. So, it's the time of the year where, you're still looking at certain things that, are going to help NFL teams, who's going to land with who, stuff like that. These things are always kind of fun. Because even if it's NFL off season, is it really?
No. It's funny. I think the sweet man that said, like, when I was a kid, it was like the NFL season, then the off season. And now it's like, all right, like NFL season ends, combine, transition tag, free agents, draft. Like, you know what I mean?
It's only, I'll be honest. It's really, the NFL off season really doesn't really, for me, the off season only really starts for me probably like early April. You know what I'm saying? Like, I should say after the draft. Then after the draft, it's like, mandatory, not mandatory, show up for camps type of situation. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? From like, early May until about like July. It's like, then it's like, all right, now it's time to start getting cranking for the season. So, but that being said, we'll see you guys next week. Johnny, any final thoughts?
Oh man, just watching my boys at UT, man, tear it up at the combine, man, getting ready to do some big things,
brother.
Man. Yeah, you already know what time it is, baby. You know what time it is, GBO, baby. Go big
Orange. It's not Steelers season, it's Tennessee.
Wait. Actually, my final thought. Actually, just got a couple minutes here. I know we said our time.
No, not really. We gotta go. See ya.
What did you think about Elimination Chamber?
I didn't watch it all yet.
You still haven't watched it? Come on.
Because people, like, I hate, this is my final thought. I hate this generation of just like, everybody has to get their freaking, as soon as something happens, has to be plastered all over the freaking internet. Man. It ruined the whole thing for me already. You know what I'm saying? But I need to watch it all for myself.
Man, I thought I was just lame at home. I was like,
I already know, but I found out this freaking morning, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm scrolling and like, oh, great. They just ruined the whole freaking thing for me.
Yeah, man.
So I was just like, great. You know what I'm saying? Like, couldn't wait, but I knew it was going to happen. I knew John Cena was going to go heel. I knew that was going to happen.
I literally
had to happen one time throughout his career. Well,
the trigger for me was the moment whenever CM Punk, whenever Seth Rollins hit CM Punk with it, and then just Cena just jumped on him. I was like, that is not a typical Cena move. And I'm like, all right, that's the closest thing we're going to get to a heel John Cena. And boom, boom, 10 minutes later.
Yep.
Love it.
So I'm just like, I just hate the internet sometimes. Just hate the internet sometimes. That's all it is. But hate's a strong word. I just say dislike. How about that? I just dislike the internet sometimes when these situations happen, because it just the wow factor. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's why
Yeah.
wrestling was so good for so long for some people, because it's like, he didn't know what was gonna happen next. And
Yeah.
they hit us
Yeah.
with the curveball. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like Keontae Davis, you know what I'm saying, hit that hook shot. That hook shot twice.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
But anyhow,
Yeah.
people, it's been fun. We'll see you guys next week.
Out.
Peace out.